Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Building the Open Web. I'm Sasha, and today we have Nick from Upshot. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Nice. So maybe we can start with uh, maybe a sentence or two on what you're working on.
I'm the co-founder and CEO of Upshot, and we're basically building a question and answer protocol that leverages this new field of mechanism design called peer prediction to incentivize people to answer subjective questions honestly. It has a bunch of applications. Right now, we're building products related to NFT appraisals with products related to insurance, content curation, decentralized governance in the pipeline.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to dive deeper into this in a bit. I wanted to start also with your background for our listeners. Where did you grow up?
I'm from the Boston area. I grew up just north of Boston, and I'm still here now.
Nice. And when did you learn that you want to start your own company?
From a pretty early age, I always kind of liked the idea of entrepreneurship and kind of bringing new ideas into the world through kind of creation and stuff like that. I've been into computer programming for as long as I can remember, so I think that helped fueled some of that desire too.
And how did you get into crypto? When was it as well?
Um, I don't know. I don't remember the specific point, but it was during high school. I've been in it since about 2012, 2013. And once I found out about it, I was pretty fascinated from the get-go. I was pretty young. And so it's kind of been a part of my life for a while.
And did you decide to also learn software engineering kind of like at some point at that point in time, or was it earlier?
It was a bit earlier, yeah. I've been doing computer programming since, I don't know, middle school. I don't know how old that is, but yeah, a bit longer.
Got it. And so how did you decide on your first job in crypto in a company? How was it and how did you pick the company?
Yeah, so the first place I worked at in the crypto industry or related to the crypto industry was John Hancock and Manulife, which are two of the largest insurance companies in the U.S. and Canada, and I think parts of Asia as well. I was brought in to lead their blockchain development team and kind of like bring it like turn it into something meaningful and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. My first kind of job in crypto was.
hmm And so since then you spent quite a bit of time on the insurance side, know good amount of things about crypto insurance, which is like very nascent field. How do you think about like bigger companies like John Hancock and others back when you worked there and now? Did anything change in terms of their interest towards crypto?
Yeah, so when I joined John Hancock and Manulife, their blockchain efforts looked pretty similar to what other large companies were doing at the time. This was the very beginning of 2018. People were thinking about kind of moving internal operations onto the blockchain. There was a lot of private blockchain work, just stuff that didn't make a ton of sense for blockchain. And so one thing I did when I joined is we kind of changed the strategy 180 degrees. We built an entirely new engineering team there. We got buy-in from the C-suite of both John Hancock and Manulife to build what was the first public blockchain project done by an incumbent at the time, at least to my knowledge. We did this in partnership with companies outside of the crypto space, big companies in the crypto space, and it became this like really exciting endeavor that I think like fueled a lot of excitement around what blockchain could actually become within these large organizations. It's always an uphill battle within these 100-plus-year-old companies to embrace such a new technology, especially at the time when we were kind of in the like throes of a bear market. But the fact that we were able to get so many people excited about what this technology could be, I think, is optimistic for the future. And I think, especially seeing how kind of Mass Mutual has moved into the space and just kind of knowing how these large organizations think about moving into new fields of technology, my prediction is we're going to see a huge wave of new insurance companies entering the space this next year to 12 to 18 months.
Nice. And maybe we can dive into Upshot. When did you decide to start Upshot? How did you go about finding co-founder?
Yeah, so after I left John Hancock, I took a little time off. I was just kind of burying myself in like various academic papers and just kind of like taking some time off, I guess. And I found this field of mechanism design called peer prediction, which is this field of mechanism design that's focused on eliciting truthful responses to questions when we don't have access to a ground truth. And so that can mean questions that are fundamentally subjective, where like preferences, opinions, things that don't have a correct answer, or questions that do have a correct answer, but that correct answer is just inaccessible. This is like the Oracle problem or things like that. And so I think I read like all of the prominent papers in that field of mechanism design. My imagination was kind of going crazy. I saw the huge potential of this in all of these different verticals I alluded to earlier. And so I reached out to a close friend of mine who was also one of the early engineers I brought onto my team at Hancock to kind of join and see if we could build something around this. He's a very talented mathematician. He went to Brown. We've known each other for 6 or 7 years. So yeah, that's kind of the how the idea for Upshot came about.
Mm-hmm. And how did the business progress since then?
Yeah, so we originally the Upshot was much more focused originally on solving this core problem in insurance around claims assessment. Uh, Claims assessment is kind of the hardest part of insurance to decentralize. It requires the most sort of subjective consensus to be reached, knowing whether or not a car accident occurred, there was fraud in this insurable event, what have you. And peer prediction offers this really convenient and elegant solution to like moving towards solving that. And as we were kind of building that out and we were refining the design of the protocol and things like that, we saw this much more general protocol kind of taking shape in front of us, and we saw how it could start to be used for pricing really esoteric assets where open markets just couldn't do the job, or curating content online, detecting fake news on Twitter, flagging different posts as either malicious or high quality or things like this, even governing decentralized communities as a kind of potentially superior alternative to voting, which is kind of riddled with problems in itself. And so we decided to kind of generalize the protocol, generalize the platform to support all of these verticals. And that's when it kind of went from being this decentralized insurance solution to being this question and answer protocol.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And what is the core technology behind Upshot today?
It's this peer prediction kind of mechanism. So this question and answer protocol that encapsulates it. So basically, there's a fairly lightweight message passing protocol that we've designed and built, and that involves people asking questions, submitting answers to those questions, and then occasionally those answers to those questions are scored, and they produce resolutions. Resolutions are kind of like the final answer to a question, and the way that works is a random committee of people who have answered questions who have been deemed eligible already are selected. They're then scored using this peer prediction mechanism. The one we're using specifically is called the determinate mutual information mechanism. It extends Shannon's mutual information from information theory. We're essentially creating correlation profiles between participants' answers across multiple questions to determine what honesty looks like, essentially determine these kind of like taste profiles and these honesty profiles between them. And then we can spit out resolutions based on how honest each of the individuals from that committee were. And as a result, we get resolved questions, and the people who submitted answers get paid based on how honest they were. And what's nice about this mechanism is not only is it dominantly truthful, which means that there's no strategy more profitable than being honest in answering these questions, it's also informed truthful, which means there's no strategy more profitable than expending effort to answer these questions. So we can begin to ask this large swath of questions that require effort, that are kind of effort intensive in finding the correct answer. Most claims questions are like this. A lot of art appraisal questions are like this, or just pricing these really esoteric assets. They require effort. And a big problem that's kind of plagued the field of peer prediction for a long time is what's known as an uninformative equilibria. Even if we can achieve dominant truthfulness in the mechanism, there is still this this potentially more profitable route agents can take in just answering without being informed, just kind of answering without effort. And why this mechanism is so powerful is kind of bridged that gap. It's provided this informed truthfulness.
Mm-hmm. And how do you go about incentivizing people to participate, to start providing their data points for you?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways people can get paid in the system. One, people asking questions can attach actual money to the question. So when I answer a question, I'm going to get a portion of that reward based on how honest I am. I think the kind of more approachable and the way we're kind of implementing from the get-go as the default way of compensating people answering questions is questions are broken into groups that are kind of like categories of questions, asking questions about CryptoPunks, asking questions about super rare art, what have you. And people who would like answers to those questions stake money into those groups. That money is then invested into various yield earning protocols on chain, and the yield earned from that capital is distributed to the people answering the questions. The people who are staking into these groups are essentially getting the answers for free still. They're just foregoing the yield themselves. They can pull out their principal at any point, but the people answering questions are still getting paid for answering those questions. And then various token incentives and other kind of rewards related to that can be used to incentivize these various actors in providing that capital and providing those answers if that level of kind of subsidization is required.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And maybe we can talk about NFTs now. So how do you think about this problem of price discovery for NFTs?
Yeah, so NFTs are tricky because they're a type of assets that is both non-fungible and low velocity, which means that they don't change hands very often, and so they're very difficult to price. And that's why we can't really rely on the open markets for pricing them. That's why UX is kind of lackluster around NFTs right now. And in trying to solve the problem, we looked to the kind of the real world, I guess, and we saw that real estate and art look very similar to NFTs and the types of assets they are. They're both low velocity and non-fungible. And what both of these assets rely on very heavily in pricing them is appraisals. We have these experts that provide their opinion about the kind of true value of these assets, and then we can have a like more reliable understanding of what an asset is worth. I feel less cheated when I go and buy a house now because I understand that 10 appraisers have said this is worth this much. The problem with appraisals in a decentralized setting is we rely heavily on identity, on reputation, on things like this, the kind of desire for the appraiser to have a job tomorrow. And we can't rely on those things in pseudonymous settings and decentralized settings. But we do have a question and answer protocol that incentivizes honesty to subjective questions. And so our idea was let's point that at pricing these non-fungible tokens and allow experts like holders of these tokens and later more nuanced ways of identifying experts to price them and provide their opinions of what they're worth.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And how is it done? Just curious in a real estate and an art space. I know there are like auctions also sometimes, right?
Yep. Yeah. So auctions are used in NFTs too, and auctions will always be, I think, the most accurate price for an asset. The problem with auctions is one, it requires the asset to change hands. Sometimes people don't want to kind of forfeit ownership of their asset, and other reasons may contribute to that. And also, auctions require the full amount of capital for the asset to be exchanged. If you're selling a house for $10 million, $10 million has to change hands for that auction to have worked as a price discovery mechanism. Appraisals offer us this more capital efficient alternative to pricing assets in the real world because now I can pay $5,000 for an appraisal of my house, and I have, albeit a less accurate price, but a more efficiently discovered price for my house. And I didn't have to forfeit ownership of it either in capturing that price.
Got it. I see. And so what you're saying is that now in this decentralized settings, it's actually harder to, given the reputation and identity, it's harder to actually be able to incentivize similar behavior. But that's exactly what you're like focusing on, figuring out how to create this repetitive game, almost questions and answers where honest people are incentivized to provide opinions.
Yeah, that's right. There's a level of coordination cost to like successfully executing appraisals in the real world that don't translate very well to the decentralized setting. That we organize ourselves into firms. These firms build up reputations. I get hired by a firm. I'm then representing the firm and its reputation. I'm borrowing its reputation to a degree. All of this stuff is very difficult to bring into a decentralized pseudonymous setting. And so what we're trying to do is kind of programatize the coordination mechanisms in this kind of informational honesty incentive.
And is there any like reputation component to it as well, in a sense that like over time you'll be able to know who is more like, so to speak, like expert in NFT pricing?
Yeah, definitely. So you get paid based on how honest you are, and so your kind of balance of what you're paid in becomes your reputation to a degree. And it can even get more nuanced than that because what we have in the blockchain is this kind of public graph of transactions. And so every actor, every appraiser in the system is a node in that graph, and every edge between an appraiser is the kind of level of honesty that they've shared together in answering like questions. So as the system grows, we get two things. One, we get these kind of clusters, these pockets of expertise that represent different topics, different categories, stuff like that. So now I know that the appraisers are kind of all clustered over here, and maybe the people who are really good at curating like funny Twitter memes generally cluster over here. And what I can also do with this is now I can apply kind of the centrality measure of our choice, say personalized page rank, to get these like really robust and nuanced views into one's reputation as it relates to different topics and other kind of appraisers or more generally agents in the system.
Mm-hmm. And how would you describe also the state of NFT market right now in the very beginning of 2021?
I think it's really exciting. I think people are really starting to like run with the idea of NFTs. I think they're really starting to gain some traction. I think 2021 is only going to see more explosive growth. I think it's this really approachable mechanism, this approachable type of asset that new people coming into the space can wrap their heads around really easily and get excited about. I think the like types of kind of products that can be created with them is kind of very diverse. We can create some really exotic stuff with them. The problem is, I think, like primarily around difficulty in pricing. I'm hesitant to purchase different types of NFTs because one, I don't know if I'm buying it at the right price, and two, I don't know if I'm going to be selling it at the right price when that time comes either. And I think that's a big blocker for people entering the space from a user experience perspective, and it also greatly hinders the types of products that can be created with these NFTs. If we have more real time kind of price feeds for NFTs, then we can create a whole plethora of new DeFi protocols and protocols on chain. We can create NFT indices. We can underwrite debt against NFTs. We can create NFT synthetics, art collection DAOs, all sorts of cool stuff. But they all kind of hinge on this idea that we have kind of efficient price discovery mechanisms for these assets.
Yeah. And do you think that NFTs also, or NFT space and movement overall is also a bit challenged with the kind of fluctuating gas prices? Like, do you think they're the first ones to be priced out versus, let's say, like some of the DeFi projects? How do you think overall about like gas fluctuations and the success of the NFT movement?
Yeah, I think gas kind of affects everything. I'm not sure if NFTs are affected disproportionately by gas volatility. It's possible that some NFTs are and some NFTs are affected less. But yeah, I think that's kind of I guess like a plague across all protocols right now on layer one Ethereum. The gas volatility and the increasing gas costs that we'll see to continue to increase over 2021. I think is placing a pretty big cap on kind of the adoption that these things can get access to.
Mm-hmm. How do you think also about the overlap between Web3 and Web2? Do you see like Web2 communities starting to be involved with like an NFT and at large like crypto projects? Is there anything that's preventing this from happening? Something like usability or otherwise? Other fronts, do you see like really a transition between Web 2 and Web 3, or do you see Web 3 as kind of like its own kind of fringe movement of sorts?
I think we'll start to see more overlap. I mean, like the NFT tweets is a good example of where there's been some overlap between Twitter and I guess like crypto Twitter more specifically and the NFT world. I think we'll start to see more of that. I think there are some technical speed bumps that need to be overcome just around integrations, kind of understanding how this technology works, improving the UX of interacting with blockchains themselves. If we're going to capture this really large mainstream audience, downloading MetaMask or interacting with wallets and gas and all of this is a pretty big ask for people that kind of haven't been interacting with the space before. But I think we'll start to see more and more of a kind of blend between the two. One thing we're thinking about doing with our NFT appraisal thing is kind of expanding it beyond NFTs to assets kind of in the Web 2 world. So One thing you could do, which is kind of fun, is I don't know if you've heard of the subreddit meme economy, but it's essentially like people kind of buying and selling different meme templates and different memes in kind of like fake way to like price the meme markets. And what we can do with our system is we can like place real money behind that. So now there can be a real meme market. People can actually go in and be these meme traders and actually make money and eventually hopefully make a living off of that. And I think like that's a pretty exciting opportunity to see the kind of Web 2 and Web 3 worlds kind of overlap in a fun way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And how do you think also about the types of new products that might emerge if NFTs were more efficiently priced?
Yeah, so I kind of the ones I mentioned. I think NFT indices are really interesting. I think underwriting debt against NFTs. I think we'll see a lot more assets kind of move, like be represented as NFTs, and if we can start to create these sort of lending protocols, these debt protocols on top of those assets, because we have these real-time price feeds, then we can see an explosion in the type of kind of risk diversification and the types of products being created. um, I think I think we can start to see some like pretty new products as well. One thing we're working on right now is uh, like actually pricing the kind of nuanced traits of these NFTs. So instead of saying like this CryptoPunk is worth this, actually like placing prices between the beanies and the glasses and the things like this, and people can create these exotic financial products around like these very specific traits of NFTs as well. And as NFTs become more efficiently priced, as we improve the kind of like frequency in which their prices are updated, I think we'll start to see NFTs and ERC20s, fungible tokens, kind of living alongside each other in different pools as well. I think we'll kind of blow open the design space for new financial products once NFTs become close to fungible.
Mm-hmm. And also, maybe you can mention some of the verticals that you think could be improved overall by the work you are doing.
hmm Yeah, so the one we're most focused on besides NFTs is insurance. Obviously, given our background, we have like a pretty healthy network in the insurance space, and I think insurance is just this really important problem that still kind of needs to be solved. And so, as we kind of fill out the feature set for the NFT product, our plan is to kind of build an end-to-end insurance system on the system as well. So, insurance just quickly is essentially made up of three functions. They are risk assessment, how much like how likely an event is to happen; underwriting, which is making sure we're underwriting policies and pooling their capital in a way that ensures we have enough capital to pay out valid claims that come in; and then claims assessment. And while like what we were building was originally focused on claims assessment and solving that problem, all three of those functions kind of rely on a subjective consensus being reached in order for them to function. And so what we can do is we can actually build an end-to-end insurance system on top of this question and answer protocol, which is something we're exploring pretty seriously and as of right now kind of plan to move into afterwards. And I think we can create a bunch of kind of new insurance products within the crypto space, outside of the crypto space. And so that's something I think there's a huge opportunity to kind of plug into. I think there's some interesting plays around more social products like content curation and things like that. Obviously, we're seeing a bunch of turmoil in the world around like news and how kind of information is distributed. And I think that like with these honesty incentives, we can actually create feeds that are more representative of kind of the truth or like what the facts are. We can have people kind of curate a feed of news articles based on whether or not they're fake, whether or not they're biased, things like that. Another vertical that we're pretty interested in is decentralized insurance. So voting is kind of famously a flawed mechanism for reaching consensus. Arrow's impossibility theorem from the 1900s was kind of like this kind of like big discovery in the world of social choice theory. It kind of like created the field of social choice theory to a degree that basically stated that voting doesn't work if we're trying to achieve some core axioms of what voting should accomplish. And it works for what we're doing right now, and it works most of the time. But I think there are some interesting ways to coordinate communities, coordinate around governance decisions using a kind of more deliberate uh, information elicitation mechanism.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think it will take us to get to this place where we're going to start experimenting quite a bit as a community with the social consensus? Like it feels like we're still like in technology and like infrastructure phase and like early days, but like at some point we're gonna like this governance experiments will start to happen. Do you think it will take like a couple years or?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of technical work to be done to support that kind of experimentation to be done at scale. But I think kind of have the base there to start experimenting in light ways. And so I think we'll see more and more experimentation over the next year, over the next 2 to 3 years. And I think things will really be able to kind of stand on their own, and like we could really perform some radical experiments and some large scale experiments 3 years out from now. And like I think that's when we start to transition from a technically focused roadmap to a socially focused one, or at least place more emphasis on a socially focused one. I think the technical roadmap could go on indefinitely, but
Mhm. And on insurance front, so you mentioned there are three kind of core components to the insurance. And do you believe that all three of them eventually will be decentralized? And also maybe separate question, like which one of those three pieces will start getting to decentralized first?
yeah, I think they can all be decentralized eventually. I think claims assessment is one that we can decentralize first. I think it's kind of the most exciting to decentralize. I think it's most applicable to achieving uh, kind of subjective consensus. I think the ask there is fairly straightforward. Did this event happen or not? And when you have a tool for reaching subjective consensus, there isn't a lot of noise in that question. When you start to have decentralized communities managing risk portfolios or performing actuarial models on various types of risks, the asks, the kind of parameters that must be taken into account expands fairly considerably. And so decentralizing that is I think a task that is best left partially centralized in the beginning, and we'll start to kind of transition into more decentralized alternatives as we go. I think I think centralized insurance works sometimes for some things. And as long as we start to build a base of decentralized insurance, we can still incorporate centralized components and slowly kind of wean off of them as the decentralized foundation becomes more robust, as it is able to stand on its own a bit more.
Hmm. And in terms of use cases for insurance that will be the first ones that you think might get adoption, do you think they'll have to do with like kind of crypto markets, kind of like wallet insurance and so forth, or how would it make its way into the kind of like bigger world?
Yeah, I think we'll still see these kind of crypto specific insurance products taking off and being what the focus is around. I think we'll start to see more niche insurance products too, more esoteric insurance products. It's tough to imagine what they'll look like, but an example of this could be an advertiser taking out insurance on an advertising campaign they're launching and saying, if I don't get this amount of impressions, or if I don't get this amount of kind of like positive metric that I'm searching for, then that's an insurable event. I can make a claim and get a payout. I think that's an interesting thing, and that can be applied at very nuanced levels if we have efficient claims assessment practices and risk assessment practices. Because now I can take out insurance on a specific tweet I send and say I want to be paid out if it doesn't reach this level of this amount of likes or retweets and things like that. I think there's some interesting insurance products to be built in the social sphere. There's much more esoteric products we can get into as well. But yeah, I think it's like there are a bunch of insurance products that we haven't even thought of yet that are made possible by more efficient insurance mechanisms.
Hmm. And when you think about also like risk assessment side of it, I would be curious, like how do you think about like prediction markets and how do they relate to the insurance space?
Yeah, prediction markets are, I think, like the best way to decentralize the actuarial process, actually, because they are these markets that are for arbitrarily specific events. And so what we can do is we can allow any actuarial model to be done by the participants of these markets, and then let the price that is kind of output that is returned by this market be the price that people agree upon. That's the consensus price across those individuals. There is some shortcomings of prediction markets that I think are solvable, that I think people will solve in the next year or so. But obviously there are problems around liquidity. There are problems around having these discrete time periods in which they're active. So a prediction market being active from January 1st to January 31st imposes some less than optimal constraints on how risk portfolios can be constructed, and how insurance policies can be kind of constructed and specified and things like that. But I think prediction markets are the best tool we have for decentralized actuarial work right now.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is preventing the kind of like more larger adoption of prediction markets today?
It's tough to say. I think user experience has been a big issue. I think there is a slight disconnect in like the user and what prediction markets offer. I think there has been a premature push for decentralization without finding product market fit, which is why I think I think like the poly market experience has been like a really compelling one, and I think they like the numbers show poly markets focused on user experience instead of these long dispute games that exist in other platforms, and these really delayed kind of resolutions. And we've seen that they've captured, I think, the kind of majority of the market share in the decentralized prediction market space. And so I think it's a lot around user experience, user education. We need to focus on finding product market fit in these new products, in these kind of new ideas and protocols, and not rush to decentralization. Sometimes if we rush to decentralization without fine tuning the product, without like finding the market segment that is going to kind of use our product, become passionate about what we're doing, then we're never going to find it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And also in terms of like scalability technologies, do you keep up to date overall on what's happening in a blockchain space, layer ones, layer twos, as well as decentralized storage solutions, or you pretty much like focused on building and not so much research phase?
Yeah, we follow that stuff pretty closely. We're excited about a bunch of the layer twos coming out and a bunch of the other layer ones, including near. One thing we do follow a bit closer than that, though, is the decentralized storage space. We're building very heavily on Skynet right now. We're even building some like interesting public utilities for Skynet specifically that we'll be announcing in the next week or so. That will just like really improve how these decentralized applications can be made. I think as we run into these kind of stoppers with gas volatility and gas prices increasing and scalability constraints, I think we'll see a lot more applications move to decentralized storage networks as a means to achieve decentralization without sacrificing user experience as kind of gas costs have done over the past 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I see. And how did you go also about Skynet, picking the Skynet, working with it? How would you describe differences between Skynet and Filecoin or any other solutions out there?
Yeah, yeah, I think Skynet's really approachable. It has like a really good developer experience. It's very easy to build on Skynet, and we've seen that in their, I think, kind of explosive growth since Skynet has launched in their developer community. I think arguably they've had one of the kind of fastest growing developer communities in terms of the decentralized storage network since the launch of Skynet, and so that impacted our kind of decision making. We're a little biased. We've kind of been following the project very closely for a long time. We've been very interested in what they were doing. I think they take a very pragmatic approach to decentralized file storage that was refreshing in a industry of like perfection and like and like intellectual purity that can sometimes get in the way of pragmatism. And so yeah, those were some of the things that impacted that decision.
Mm-hmm. And what's next for Upshot if you think about 2021? What do you hope to accomplish? What are the also kind of like North Star main things to focus on?
Yeah, so we're opening up our NFT appraisal product in the next couple of weeks, and we're really focused on just creating as good of an experience around that as possible, providing really robust price analytics and data analytics around NFTs, this asset that doesn't have those right now, creating these adjacent products we mentioned around kind of NFT synthetics and NFT indices and things like that. And then it's about kind of opening up, like creating developer tools that plug into the protocol, so other people can build on the protocol in these other verticals, and then us really sinking our teeth into the vertical we think is going to capture a ton of value, and one of the verticals we're most passionate about, which is insurance. So this year we're really focused on kind of opening up the protocol and building a developer community and a kind of community in general of users, of people answering questions on this protocol, as well as creating these really kind of focused, delightful, I guess, experiences in the verticals we're interested in.
Mhm. And when you think about building developer community, uh, are there any successful or interesting examples that you want to take kind of example from in terms of like what are the strategies that might work in terms of bringing developer adoption?
Yeah, I think it comes down to one, like having a strong brand that has like strong core values that people can relate to and get behind. And I also think it's just like creating a set of tooling and a protocol that is both lightweight and approachable enough that people can just kind of pick it up and start running with it. I think our job as people trying to build a developer community, as people trying to build a protocol that we'd like others to build on top of, is to make the barriers to entry as small as possible. And so that's what we're focused on. I think that's the best way to build these developer communities. And I think what we're building is like pretty unique as well. No one's built around peer prediction before. We're offering people this sort of new primitive to incentivize truthfulness, and also for people to get paid for these kind of areas of expertise they weren't getting paid for before. And so I think the types of products and the kind of excitement around building different products on top of the protocol will be fairly tangible as that stuff starts to mature. And so that's another aspect of how we're thinking about building developer communities.
Hmm. And in terms of also sentiment around new developers entering the space, do you see any difference between 2018 and now, among either your friend group or others? Like, do you see more people entering the space?
Yeah, yeah. People, whenever we have these cycles, like obviously a bunch more people, a lot more people enter the space, and yeah, and we're seeing a big influx right now. I hope more developers enter the space. Hiring is very tough right now, and we're trying to hire. So uh, yeah, I think there's like a better sentiment around developers entering the space. I think there's always going to be a bit of noise when this happens as well. People entering the space for the wrong reasons, people seeing prices going up and seeing it as this kind of opportunistic thing in entering the space, as it being tied more to the money, which is a part of everyone's decision making, and it should be, but more so than the values and like what the kind of longer term vision here is with this industry, with this technology. So yeah.
Hmm. And what are you hiring for? Maybe we can see if listeners would be referred to this.
We're hiring developers across the entire stack right now. So we're hiring smart contract developers, full stack developers. Our non kind of smart contract stack is largely made up of TypeScript, but we're hiring very aggressively right now, and mostly developers. So if you're looking to get into the space and work on kind of new interesting ideas around kind of incentivizing truthfulness, you should reach out to us on Twitter.
Nice. Awesome. And for everyone else, for listeners, like where should they go overall to learn more or participate?
Yeah, so they can go to our website at upshot.io. We'll be opening up the application, like I said, in the next couple of weeks to the general public. And then the best places to kind of consume content right now are our Twitter at Upshot HQ and our Medium at Upshot HQ. We'll be opening up the Discord in the next week or so, as well as the newsletter. We'll be sending out a regular newsletter as well. So those are the best places to follow us.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.